Can everybody hear me? I'm going to give it just another minute or so. They're going to go outside and announce, because what we're going to talk about with DOT today pretty much affects everybody in the room, so we want to make sure everybody has a chance to listen to it. Yeah, there are some things that are going to basically affect people in different ways, so not everybody will be affected by every part of this, but there are certain parts that will affect everyone, so you want to make sure if you don't have a notebook, you might want to think about getting pen and paper ready, because there's going to be some things you may want to write down. We are also, at the end of the speech, we're going to pass out so that you can give us your information and email addresses. We'll email you all the websites and the certificates and the documentation that you'll need to support all of this. So once the speeches get started, and we're going to start passing around basically a sign-up form, make sure you give us your full name, your address in the event that you don't have an email address, and then an email address if possible. It's my Uncle John Marietta. I'm going to go through a slideshow here with some basic information. If you'll hold the questions to the end, John's a lot better at DOT than I am, so he's going to help me to answer the questions. But we're going to go through basically step by step what's been communicated to us up until this point in time. Now, a little bit of an disclaimer here. The information that's contained in this, the information that we're presenting to you, is basically informational purposes only. At this point in time, the rules are changing, and we're not exactly sure what they're going to be looking for and what they're going to be doing. They've just announced that they are going to be out and actively pursuing it. So if you have any questions, we're also including 2 DOT consultants. So if you want to contact them, they can probably give you a lot more thorough advice than what we can. We're just going to give you a basic overview of what has been communicated to us and what we've experienced ourselves. There's your disclaimer. The most common violations, according to DOT, is no PHMSA hazardous materials registration. Later on, we're going to show you where you can get that registration, how you sign up for it, and the table of events and pricing for it. No hazardous material placards, which I think everybody's fairly familiar with. We'll also show you the placards that are required. A few years ago, you used to be able to use the dangerous placards. Now you have to use the 1.4G placards. We're going to show you an example here in just a little bit. Limited or no hazardous material training. This is something that affects all of us. If you have an employee or you yourself handle merchandise year-round, or an employee over 90 days, you have to have specific training. And we're going to go through and show you where you can get the training videos. We also, part of the email, we will email you the tests, the answers to the tests, and the certificates that you have to have. We're going to go through all this in much more detail here as we move on, but you do have to have training. And no CDL with hazardous materials endorsement. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and he said, I have a CDL, but he didn't have the hazardous materials endorsement. Without that, you're still not classified to carry fireworks. In detail, I'm going to read a little bit of this to you. All supervisors or managers who engage in activities which directly affects hazmat transportation safety are considered hazmat employees and must be properly maintained. This does not include the people working in your retail stores unless they work over 90 days. So if you have a 10 operation where you're only open 8 days out of the year, like we are here in Kansas, that's a temporary employee. Now, if you have a warehouse facility where you're bringing the merchandise in, sorting the orders, shipping it out, then that person, if they're working for you over 90 days, has to have the training. Or even if they're not going to work over 90 days, you have to have somebody who is trained working with them at all times. In most instances, us ourselves. All hazmat employees may either be supervised by a trained person or receive training within 90 days of employment. Same thing. Temporary and part-time employees may only work for you for brief periods, but must always be supervised or directed by trained employees at all times during employment. This is kind of another one of those things that's worded vaguely, so when in doubt, you're much better off to have trained the employee. Our company policy is that we train everybody the day you start. That way, you don't have to worry about it and it's taken care of. This applies to any employee who loads, unloads, or handles fireworks. Manufactures, tests, repairs, and labels fireworks for transportation. Prepares hazmat fireworks for transportation, packaging, boxing, and prepares shipping documents. So, in our particular instance, Virginia handles all of our bill of ladings. So she puts together the shipping documents. Doesn't load the fireworks, doesn't touch the fireworks, but she still has to be trained in handling fireworks. So if you have somebody separate that's filling out your bill of ladings and your documentation, that person has to also have this training course. Anybody who's responsible for the safety of transporting the fireworks. So anybody that you have putting the load locks on or moving the merchandise around, in any way, shape, or form transporting the merchandise. Anyone who operates a vehicle used to transport fireworks in commerce as part of your business. This is where this gets a little tricky. If you have a stand, let's use Pittsburgh for instance. I think everybody knows where we have our store up next to McDonald's on North Broadway. If I have someone like my store manager who moves the merchandise back and forth in commerce, they run out of a case of cuckoos, they want to get that case of cuckoos, they have to be trained in handling that merchandise if they're going to be over 90 days. Anybody who would deliver to your customers, so truck drivers. Transfers between retail and warehouse locations and return of fireworks from a retail selling location. Returns are a very important part that I think a lot of people think or don't think about. You know, at the end of the season, everybody's tired, everybody's trying to get their merchandise moved back in. The people who are packing that merchandise and moving that merchandise back into your warehouses also have to be trained. Hazmat training employee must include general awareness. This is familiarization training, function-specific training, safety training, and security awareness training. Once again, and I'll show you here later on, we're going to give you a website for a video. You showed the employee the video. We're also going to give you a test. It's a paper test, ABCD. You go through, you take the test. You can take the test open book. Then once they've passed the test, you have to check it. And then you have to put a certificate into their file. It's very important that you have the certificate. Even though you have the test and you have the answers and you show they passed, DOT does not recognize that. You have to physically have the certificate saying they passed. You must take and pass the transportation and handling of fireworks examination. Training certificate becomes a part of their employee file. So you don't have to actually have it with the test, but it's smart just to put it all together. This is an example of the training certificate. So I want to make sure I reiterate this. Even though you have the test, you have to have this certificate or else they will not accept that as a trained employee. Sensitive security plan. And this part gets very detailed. We're going to give you some outlines. We're also going to give you a sample on the email, a sample security plan that was provided to us by the APA, the American Pyrotechnics Association. This is in no way something you can copy. All this is an example. I'll give you an example. Here in Pittsburgh, everybody knows we have a fence around our warehouse. So in our security plan, we put in there that we have 24-hour security, a fence around our warehouse, whatever, lighting on the outside of the building. It gets to that detailed. If you don't have that fence and you have it in there, that's a finable situation. If you don't have, and I forget the correct wording, but I think it's sensitive documents on the top of your security plan, it's a finable offense. These security plans are extremely important and need to be fairly detailed. So what we're going to give you is a sample form. If you have any questions once you've looked at the sample form and you can't fit it to your business or your warehouse, give us a call. We're going to do as much as we can to help you at that point in time. You have to have that on hand and available. Now, that does not mean you have to give it to anybody that walks in the door. It has to be a qualified person who's asking for it in order to make it available to them. So if your local fire department walks in and says, I want to see your security plan, you have to make it available to them. If Joe Consumer walks in off the street and says, hey, I want to see your security plan, you do not have to make it available to them. The plan basically has to consist of 4 parts. Part 1 is a planning process to assess potential security risk. Pretty self-explanatory. Part 2, plan itself, identifying those risks and measures taken to deter, detect, or reduce the vulnerability. Example, once again, the fence. The fence is a way that we're using to deter and